Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me, 70, and welcome to the first of my Cubs podcasts. Since this is the first podcast I'm doing, I'm going to explain what this whole podcast thing is going to be about. This channel is going to be a hybrid gaming / baseball channel, so half of the videos are going to be me playing the show, Madden, 2K, and maybe some other stuff. The other half is going to have something to do with the MLB, and part of that is going to be a series of podcasts. I call them podcasts anyway. They're not actually, they're sort of talk videos, but podcast sounds better. Some of you may know that I'm a Cubs fan, so I want to focus a lot of my podcasts on that. I also want to focus some of my podcasts on the entire MLB. But today's podcast is going to be just about the Cubs. So I think I've said everything I need to. Welcome to Cubs podcast number 1. This first podcast is going to be about what I think the Cubs plan should be for the offseason. The last 2 years have been going on a downward trend for the Cubs since winning the World Series. In 2017, they got demolished by the Dodgers in the NLCS, and this year they lost the division in Game 163 and promptly lost the NL wildcard game. Theo Epstein's strategy during these 4 seasons was to let all the young talent develop and see where we ended up. Since 2016, some of the talent has trended in the right direction, but many of the players have regressed to the point where their peak trade value has already passed. If the Cubs plan to compete next year, they need to be very busy with transactions and be willing to part with a good chunk of their core that hasn't lived up to expectations. First, I'm going to talk about the rotation. The Cubs' rotation is extremely deep. Options for the starting rotation include Jon Lester, Yu Darvish, Cole Hamels, Kyle Hendricks, Jose Quintana, Tyler Chatwood, and Mike Montgomery. Additional prospects to look for are Dwayne Underwood Jr., who made one start in the MLB this year against the Dodgers, and Adbert Alzolay, who was supposed to be in the big leagues by September but was shut down with injuries in May. With how deep the rotation is, I don't see Alzolay or Underwood making the roster. I also think that Montgomery will end up in the bullpen. The Cubs have had a history of overtaxing their bullpen early in the year because starters can't go deep into games, and Montgomery doesn't have the stamina like the other starters do. Adding him to the bullpen as a long reliever lengthens the bullpen and ensures that the starting rotation has stamina. That leaves us with 6 starters and 5 rotation spots. In my eyes, Tyler Chatwood is the odd man out. His control issues last year gave me doubts about his ability to perform at the caliber of the other starters. I also think the Cubs need to find a way to dump some of the salary of our starting rotation if we want to be big players in the free agent market, since Lester, Hamels, and Darvish will all be making $20 million or more next season. Tyler Chatwood will be making close to $13 million next year, and with the role he might play if he stays on the team, I don't think he's worth the money. The bullpen has always been a revolving door for the Cubs. The players under control next year for the Cubs so far are Brandon Morrow, Pedro Strop, Steve Cishek, Brian Dunsing, Brandon Kintzler, Carl Edwards Jr., Mike Montgomery, and Randy Rosario. The Cubs also had pitchers who bounced around from AAA to the MLB, namely Justin Hancock, Dylan Maples, Alec Mills, and James Norwood. I wouldn't expect to see any of those 4 on the opening day roster, though. In this age of baseball, a bullpen of less than 8 pitchers would not be a smart move. The Cubs have 8 major league level pitchers, but it is not at the best talent level it could be on. The Cubs have 3 relief free agents to keep an eye on: Jesse Chavez, Justin Wilson, and Jorge De La Rosa. They also have Jaime Garcia, but really? Wilson was too wild for him to merit a return to Chicago. Chavez had the best 2 months of his career as a Cub, and this will work out perfectly for him to get an overpriced contract. Chavez is 35, and it's unlikely he would continue the success he had in Chicago. That brings us to De La Rosa. As it stands, the Cubs have 3 lefties in the bullpen, but Brian Dunsing is a candidate for a trade. I'll get to that later. De La Rosa flew under the radar in his month and a half with the Cubs, pitching with a 1.29 ERA in 21 innings. Despite being 37, De La Rosa has seemed to get better with age. The Cubs could probably get De La Rosa on a 1-year deal for a discount, and even if he has a down year, he could transition into a role as a lefty specialist. The bullpen total now stands at 9. There are 2 players that I think should be moved in order to strengthen the bullpen. These players are Brandon Kintzler and, as I mentioned before, Brian Dunsing. Kintzler has had a respectable and consistent career, but I think he is similar to Justin Wilson in that a mid-season change of scenery was not good for him. Dunsing was very good in 2017 and actually had a sub-1 ERA as late as early June in 2018, but had a nightmarish last 4 months and found himself with a diminished role. I'd rather not have two pitchers that Joe Madden doesn't trust taking up valuable roster spots. I don't see the Cubs getting a significant return for those two. It's more about clearing up space for better relievers. A potential target for a trade would be the Mets. They have no problem picking up older players, and with their new GM, they will be aggressive and trying to compete. Carl Edwards Jr. is an interesting case. He had upper 90s heat with a nasty curve when he first came up, but this year he pitched through many struggles. In May, he went on the disabled list with right shoulder inflammation, and when he came back, he had diminished velocity and struggled with control, especially when he first entered the game. These all sound like symptoms of someone who needs Tommy John surgery. I'm obviously not a medical expert, but Edwards must have some injury or he's just mentally weak. But I can't imagine mentality issues accounting for all of that. I can't count on Edwards being put on the DL, but that might clear up a roster spot and help him get in a better state of mind. At this point, we have 7 or 6 spots filled. We turn our attention now to the free agent market. I want to address the rumors that the Cubs need a new closer. They don't. Even with Morrow being kept on a strict schedule, Pedro Strop is an elite reliever with closing experience. I have a video idea for Pedro Strop. Stay tuned soon. A free agent I like is David Robertson. He's a veteran and has been good for a long time. He's not a big-name guy like Andrew Miller or Josh Hader, but he is a very good setup man, and I think the Cubs can get a 2-year deal for a good price with him. Another guy I'd have my eye on is an internal player. This was Dakota Mekke's first year above single-A, and he thrived. Combined between AA and AAA, Mekke's had a 1.17 ERA and a 1.21 WHIP. By the way, when was the last time you've ever seen someone with a lower ERA than WHIP? In 147 career minor league innings, Mekke's has given up 4 home runs. I doubt Mekke's will break camp with a major league team, but he's definitely someone I'd have my eye on if there are injuries or guys need to rest down the stretch. If nothing else works, the Cubs can always sign Bartolo Colon. That's always a very good option. Now we move to the offense. At catcher, the Cubs really can't and shouldn't make any transactions. Wilson Contreras is a lock for the next few years unless he keeps hitting like he did in the second half this year. Comparing videos from the first and second halves, Contreras' swing was noticeably slower and more lethargic in the last 2 months. But if he can bring back the lively bat that he had in the first half for next year, we should be in good shape with our starting catcher. Victor Caratini is also a lock in my book, as he was Cole Hamels' personal catcher last year, and his bat started to really improve at the end of the year. In the infield, Rizzo is at first, Baez is at short, and Bryant is at third. There's no debating that. I just like to say for a second that the Bryant rumors are not true. He's not going anywhere. He did have a down year last year, but expect him to be fully healthy and swinging a hot bat right out of the gates. Also, anyone who thinks the Cubs are going to retain Russell for after his suspension, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't be a baseball GM. Guys like Aroldis Chapman provide enough on the field to merit picking them up, even with the off-field strings attached. Russell doesn't. Everyone was saying that Russell had a down year this year. This year, Russell had his highest batting average in his career. And don't get me started on his arm. He has a good glove, but his arm slot is so bad, almost every week he uncorks a wild throw. Anyways, Russell should not be coming back. Most people would say trade him, but I seriously think he has no value anymore. He should have been 100% gone by this past year's trade deadline. In my opinion, Ben Zobrist should be a bench-ish guy. He might get 4 starts a week, but he's 38 and I don't see him putting up the same numbers he did last year. And not all of his starts will be at second. That's why I think we need to shop for a second baseman. The best fit for the Cubs, though, might not be a free agent. Whit Merrifield of the Royals can not only play second base, but outfield as well, where he can play when Zobrist is at second. Merrifield led all second basemen in WAR last year, not counting Jose Ramirez, who was primarily a third baseman until September. And he led MLB in hits and stolen bases. Merrifield is under contract control for a long time, and the Royals are obviously not going to compete next year, so the only issue with Merrifield is assembling a good enough package to land him. Backup infield will be Tommy La Stella. He's a very underrated pinch hitter and is extremely valuable to the team. David Bodie is already a legend, but he has a glaring mechanical flaw in his swing, and if it doesn't get fixed by spring training, I think he should start the year in AAA. That leaves 4 spots left for the outfield. Candidates for this are Ian Happ, Albert Almora, Jason Hayward, Kyle Schwarber, Terrence Gore, and Johnny Field. Gore should obviously start in AAA though. He needs to learn how to bunt and how to not swing at sliders in the dirt. Now, of course, Field would not make the cut with the other 4 as competition, but in my opinion, Ian Happ is someone who should be traded. He has versatility and power, but with the amount of playing time he would get, I don't think he will be developing into a good enough player to be worth keeping. Almora is a great defender, and if he hits like he did in the first half this year, we should have no problem in center. Kyle Schwarber is a great example of a 3 true outcomes hitter: home runs, walks, and strikeouts. With this team's lack of patience and power, Kyle Schwarber should stick around for at least 1 more year. Jason Hayward is guaranteed top 3 Gold Glove finisher in right. Hopefully new hitting coach Anthony Iapoce does good things for Hayward. I don't really know what the future holds for Hayward as a Cub, but I know that no team will be willing to take on his $20 million plus annual salary until he proves himself next year. Field, who was recently claimed off waivers from Minnesota, might actually be a feasible option. In 221 at-bats combined with the Rays and Twins last year, he had a .657 OPS. It's not great, but it's passable for a bench bat. In addition, Field had a lower home run per at-bat than Chris Bryant last year, which, by the way, is a good thing. If the Cubs choose to shop the market, a good option would be the 39-year-old Matt Holliday. His bat looked very lively in his old age last year, making some think that his long layoff from the MLB might have provided him an offensive rebirth. So now that I've broken things down position by position, here's what I project the opening day roster to look like. John Lester, Cole Hamels, Jose Quintana, Kyle Hendricks, Yu Darvish, Mike Montgomery, Brandon Morrow, Pedro Strop, Steve Cishek, Randy Rosario, Jorge De La Rosa, David Robertson, Carl Edwards Jr., Wilson Contreras, Victor Caratini, Anthony Rizzo, Whit Merrifield, Javier Baez, Chris Bryant, Ben Zobrist, Tommy La Stella, Albert Almora, Kyle Schwarber, Jason Hayward, and Matt Holliday. Now I want to address how we would acquire Whit Merrifield. Obviously, the Royals won't trade Merrifield unless they get a good enough package for the future. Players I've targeted for trades are Chatwood, Kinsler, Dunsing, and Happ. Kinsler and Dunsing are old and have pretty much no value. I think they'd be better off being swapped for middle-level prospects. Chatwood is someone whose contract the Royals could take on for a year or 2, wait for him to get hot, and sell for a decent prospect. Happ would benefit from more playing time, and the Royals would definitely offer him lots of it. It would probably take 1 more prospect to land Merrifield, and that prospect would almost certainly need to be either Underwood or Alzolay. Personally, I would choose Underwood to be included in the trade. Alzolay seems closer to helping the big league Cubs than Underwood. Thanks for watching my first podcast. I'm definitely looking for any suggestions you guys might have. Feel free to leave them in the comments. Also, obviously, not everyone is going to agree with the moves I suggested. If you have an idea you'd like to share, just let me know. I'll reply to everyone's comment. Anyways, thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.